Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Neptunes Sunday. It's your boy V Moss. Every time we have a guest, I like anyone that takes the time to talk to us is a special guest, but I don't know if it gets much more special than this. Like we have a member of the original family, Mike Etheridge. Welcome to the show, man.
Man, thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Let's get right into it, man. For those who don't know, introduce yourself to the people.
Well, I mean, my name is Mike Etheridge. I'm just a simple guy, man. Like he said, I was in the original Neptunes along with Pharrell, Chad, Hugo, Shay Haley at the time. And yeah, man, I just, we were kids doing music. So and I progressed into obviously doing work with Teddy Riley. So that was a big part of my career in the music industry. But yeah, man, I'm thankful to still be here, just even talking about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's a blessing.
It's a blessing because, I'm from Richmond. And
Okay, okay.
I went to Hampton. So I
Wow.
that's a huge part of this, the reason why this exists, right? Like it's not just about Pharrell and Chad, it's about the music and the culture, but also the
Mhm.
pride that I have and the people around me have that I'm sure that you're share, which we're gonna get right into. Like just talk about the 757, right? Like just talk about how the 757 kind of raised you and kind
Yeah.
of impacted so much greatness in the world, but talk about how that was growing up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very important. Like you said, the impact that the Neptunes had on Virginia culture, and throughout the world, but especially in this area too. Like you said, just for you to have a podcast dedicated to, you know, what that movement meant in the world, I think is even a testament to the power of what they were able to achieve. And I say they because, obviously they went on to do great things. So, I really honor uh, the success that they've had as musicians and creatives in the culture. So, and I think Virginia, one of the things that made that time great was because of Teddy Riley's studio, Future Records. I always use that as a base point in Princess Anne High School, and just Virginia in general, because you realize Timberland, like I used to spend the night over at Timberland's house. So we were like, all of us were just musicians that love music coming up. So I think back then, Future Records was the hub. When Teddy came into town, it put a tangible piece to a dream that many have as far as being in the music industry, understanding what the music industry was, what a studio was, and then we got to see in real time the success that he had at the height, Teddy Riley, of his career, which was, coming in off a guy starting Blackstreet, coming in with millions of dollars behind him from MCA and then progressed into Interscope with Jimmy Iovine. So, he had an unlimited budget. So it put a reality to something that some Virginians dream about. And I think to add to that, now we don't really have that as much because you don't like it's not a New York or an Atlanta where you're gonna run into industry people all the time. But here or Los Angeles or something like that. But here, at that time, we were close to that because of one entity that gave hope to everyone. So then spawned the Pharrell, then spawned the Timberland, who was a part of the Jodeci camp and the Missy and all of that. So, man, all I could say is Virginia probably was responsible for much of what took place in the music industry, even though it doesn't get the credit. We can't forget Bink Dog and people
Mhm.
like that who were still involved in that era and that time. So I just think it's man, I could go on for hours just about the impact of the initial because it all started from us going to Princess Anne High School
Right.
and banging on that studio door.
Yeah. So back to you though. Like let's talk a little bit about like what got you into music in the first place? Like what
Okay.
what what's your origins into what inspired you to start singing and what made you fall in love with the music?
It's a gift, man. And I think for me, I was adopted, number one. So at 6 months old.
Mm,
So, you know, I was placed in the family that adopted me, which are my parents. I don't know any other parents but them. But they were godly people. So when I got into that environment at 6 months old, all it was about was God and church. So I became acquainted with music very young because my mom was in the choir, church, all of my life, that's all it was. I started singing at 6. At 6, I think that's when my mom and them realized, I had a gift of music, not just singing, but just period. Like I hear something and I think my main gift is melodies as far as like when I hear them and things of that nature. So, and then being able to articulate that musically. And then I started out as a drummer. So at 6 years old, they bought me my first drum set and things just kind of happened. It was a Mickey Mouse joint. And I was so like, passionate. I tore holes through that thing because I was like, I wanted the real deal. Like, why are you giving me this? Because I'm watching the guys at church and then when I would start singing in church, it was a song called Said I Wasn't Gonna Tell Nobody, but I couldn't keep it to myself. So as a kid, I started like quartet stuff, the male chorus. I was inspired and I got up at 6. They gave me the mic at church. I'll never forget one Sunday school and it was over. It was like everybody's on their feet. This kid is singing like, so that's what music started for me. So I'm a church person. Virginia is a very, in that time especially, was very community orientated with church. Church was a big part of all of our lives. You had to go to church. It was not in my house. It wasn't an option. So I became acquainted with music that way, and I just had a gift, man. That the church helped to develop, and I had an organist who was the music director at my church, New Hope Baptist Church in Virginia Beach. And they're kind of like, I don't want to say famous, but the church has a lot of notoriety, especially even to this day, because the pastor's son was killed in the Virginia Beach mass shooting, who was a real great friend of mine, Keith Cox. That was my guy. Like we sung in the choir together. That like I started like I would hear, and then see, this is the thing. I have to say this because gospel was such a big thing in my household. I would sneak and listen to R&B at night on the radio. And then my uncles would give me like hip hop records. Now, this is all pre Neptunes, you know what I mean? So I was just developing that way through music. And I just had an amazing gift, that God gave me. And it still helps to this day to write music, hear music, and just love it. Cause I would actually write down the lyrics of like Midnight Star, Stevie Wonder when I was young. And then I would learn the songs and practice them in my room. So that's how I became, enthralled with singing. And then I had the influence of Sam Cooke and and the Soul Stirrers and Aretha Franklin, and because I had the old gospel music as a kid that all I could listen to. So the Mighty Clouds of Joy, the Williams brothers, like the gospel music roots, James Moore just was so deep in the household. But like I said, so that's where the mesh came for me, all right, of cultures. And then, obviously once I got into school, that's when Pharrell and I came across each other and things of that nature. So my musical background, definitely, I'm glad you asked that question because a lot of people may not know that. It's definitely strongly rooted it's completely rooted in gospel music. And then the influence, like I said, with my aunts and uncles, that's when I started listening to Barbra Streisand, Air Supply, Stevie Wonder, the Motown era. I remember I would take the records. So you might not, you be too young, you're a little too young for this, but I would take the records as a kid. They had a record collection that was crazy because my aunts and uncles lived in Norfolk. I'm from Virginia Beach, but I would be out there all the time. So I would like put the records on, the little 45s, bro, and I would just digest that along with the gospel music I was exposed to through, guess what, 8 tracks. Oh yeah, we had the 8-track player in the crib, the big long chest joint. You know what I mean? So that is just, music was different back then, bro. You know what I mean? It's not. That's why sometimes now I just, even with my grandchildren in the car, I play some of that stuff to expose them to that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely
Yes.
feel that because I definitely feel like that's part of, and I talk about it on the show every now and then, like growing up with my mom, just being in the car with her, listening to Luther and listening to
Oh
Whitney
wow.
Houston and listening to Phyllis Hyman, like that
Woo.
kind of stuff that kind
Yeah.
of, when you talk about the variety that you're getting, all these different types of music from the different people that you're around, and it also speaks to like how important the music was to the family structure when we was growing up too, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
that much younger. I mean, I'm a lot younger than I look. I just actually just turned 38 last week.
You
So
said
like
how old?
38.
Oh wow. Okay. I would have definitely gave you 35, maybe 32. Yeah, you look good, brother. That's
I
great,
appreciate
man.
I appreciate it, man. But yeah, man, I think like you were saying, like that's definitely a huge part of, the family and the Black family culture was the music that we
Yes.
do together. And
Mm-hmm.
and being able to have those different genres or different artists based on who you were with. You say your aunts and uncles
Facts.
listening to this, your mom listening to this. Like I think that's very important to our culture for real.
Yes. Very important and very what's kind of and we have to pass that down.
Yeah.
Like I said, and I think and gospel music has always been the substratum of blues and different things of that nature. So, I'm fortunate to have that background and the rhythmic patterns that come from that. You know, in that African culture, we come from that. You know what I mean? And just being on beat and the whole nine, the downbeat. So it's just, it's a blessing, man, to have that gift, and I'm thankful for it.
So you mentioned Princess in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about the moments where you first got connected with Pharrell and Chad.
Okay, so the first time I met Pharrell was in middle school,
Okay.
which is I was in the band, but he wasn't in the band or anything, but he was a student at Independence
Mm,
Middle School. So that's why I first met him, and we just kind of kicked it. It never got to the musical level at that point, but that was when we became friends, or just like everybody from the beach kind of knew each other, hung out. If you were creative or something, you just kind of gravitated into a certain group. But yeah, so that's how we first met. So then, fast forward to a couple of years, Princess Anne High School is the high school for our area. Pharrell lived maybe 5 minutes from me in a neighborhood called Windsor Woods, but he lived in Windsor Oaks, but it's all right there. His
gotcha.
mom was a school teacher, things of that nature. So, and you got to think in our area, blacks are a minority in Virginia Beach. So
Hmm.
obviously, you know, the black people kind of like gravitated towards one another, even though we were socially aware and cool with everybody. It's just, that's just how it was because our area was not as integrated as say Norfolk. Okay, so that's where the cultural differences came in. All right, but as far as like that's how our friendships developed because pretty much all the black people you don't know of them. So we
Right.
all went to Princess Anne High School, and we were in the band together. That's where the relationship really developed. Like people don't know. I know because he's like the Louis Vuitton head of men's wear at Louis Vuitton. Um, one of the greatest producers. He's become, just an icon. But that guy is a comedian. So I'm a comedian. So like we just became friends, like, and we just laugh all the time. Like the classes we were in together was a big mistake on the public school system because we was just like the jokesters. We gonna be laughing all day. So we just developed a friendship. You know what I mean? It wasn't about even music at that point. It was just we went band together, but we just kicked it, and that's when the connection came. You know what I'm saying? He's always been a super creative writer, artist, can draw all of that stuff. So he started writing songs in high school. Just beating on the table or like coming up with melodies in his head. And what happened? He had the vision of this collective of me, him, and Chad that would be called the Neptunes. At first, it was called the Building Children
Mm,
because all he knew was we were building something. And you know what I mean? We became this Building Children collective. And me being a lot, maybe 4 or 5 years younger than him, I wasn't as visionary. He knew, I think, early on, like this is what I'm gonna do with my life.
right.
You know what I'm saying? So he kind of was putting things together, and then he would bring me songs in school. We went band together, but he would say, Mike, I got this song. Let's go to Chad's house. Now, Chad went to a different school. So let me get people to see that. He went to a school called Kempsville,
Mm,
but they met at Old Donation, which when they were younger, which was a gifted school, but then they kept that connection. So Pharrell's like, look, I know this Filipino guy named Chad. We can go to his house and get on the microphone and he can play, and he's a musician. He can put music to this, and that's how we started building a relationship. So he would come to me in lunch, and we would go over these records, like "Look in the Water," which is a record that's on the Master Plan project that I just put out not too long ago, which was an unreleased project under Teddy Riley. Matter of fact, Blackstreet remade the record too.
Mm.
But the original version with mine, I'm telling you, is just it. It's just because it came from that high school lunch table, so it
Right.
could never be topped. Period. I don't care who sings it. But so we would go to Chad's house and record these records, and I would be singing some of them. He might rap on some of them. We had this thing going, and I think he really didn't know at that time production was and writing and shaping careers would be his strongest gift. But I think I was like the first one he produced. You know what I mean? So "Look in the Water" was a record that we knew was dope. Had a record called "More and More." It's on that album too. So those two records he wrote. But yeah, man. Once he was bringing me those songs in the lunchroom, and we go to Chad's house, we would record them. And
Mm.
so we just kept recording, riding around in the car. Mom had a old Volvo that we all used to ride in. The Volvo was like the mothership. We're gonna get picked up, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna hang out, we're gonna go to the Chad's room, we're gonna drive his parents crazy to where they're gonna be. His mom was a nurse, so imagine her working 12-hour shifts, and we just in over the garage in Chad's room, killing the music, turning it up, making all types of. It was fun, man. It was a time of we weren't making music to get on the radio or anything. It was just a love, man, and it was something that developed into something great that's still blessing my life even now. You know what I mean? Obviously, their lives are being completely blessed, and it's just a blessing, man. So that's how that went.
Real quick, I want to make sure to hear your actual telling of this so people can get it clear about where the Neptunes name comes from. Because I have a good sense of it, but I want to hear it from you because I think people need to be clear about what that really means and how actual like native that is to y'all in the 757.
Well, it came from the Neptune ideal in Virginia Beach, the statue down there.
Right.
So, in Pharrell's mind, we're going to be Virginia Beach. We're going to represent Virginia Beach. And I think you can see that even now, he still honors that. You know what I mean? So that's where the Neptune name came from. And it was, and it also, too, because Chad was let me just say this too. I think Chad played a part in that too. I ain't gonna say I know, because Chad was into space.
Mm.
Chad's room was a planetarium. You ever been to a planetarium?
Yeah.
He turned that thing into darn near a real functioning planetarium. When you walked in there, it was like you felt like you was in another world in his room back then. So that's another thing. The planet Neptune was a big part of that too. So it was like a duality.
Yeah.
I think you saw that even when he came with the, astronaut suit and things of that nature, with his clothing and just the visions he started to have later. But the Neptunes was a duality of Virginia Beach and space culture, being out of this world, being different, and I think that's what it embodied, and just being your own, doing your own thing. So that's where the name came from. And we had a song called "Wet, Wet, Wet" that we performed, because the water, obviously. If you look in the Water, that record, you know what I mean? So there you get in the Neptune early meaning through the records and the songs. But we had a song called "Wet, Wet, Wet," man, where we came on stage with the water guns and started and that was at the high school talent show, man. And we were spraying the crowd. They went crazy. So yeah, we just, it was fun, and it was so creative. And I think that creative spirit still lives in him and Pharrell. Much props to that, because even you see it come out in the fashion and the different things that he do. That's why I tell people, like, what you see is not an act. That's genuine who he is and what he's been, since we've started.
So you mentioned Teddy Riley.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Riley makes it to Virginia.
Hmm.
How did y'all figure out a way to make an impression on him to really
Oh.
have him scoop y'all under his wing in Virginia while
Mhm.
he was in Virginia?
I think, well, more so it was a combination of, well, it was persistence. That's what it boils down to. Because literally, kids from Virginia coming from a high school, knocking on the studio door looking crazy. I mean, come on, just think about it. Who in their right mind is going to let us in there? Why are they here? Get them out of here. So the security guard, we became cool with the security, his security at the time, which was Seafood. Um, Seafood is like, I don't want to say the mascot of Future Records, but he's infamous because he was Ted's bodyguard. He was a kung fu expert,
Wow.
and we developed a real dope relationship with him to where he started training us, man. Like even before we got like it was just he because we got so cool with him first because he was the first line of defense. Like who's not? Why y'all coming back here again? All right, so he would tell us don't come back again, like literally. But I'm gonna tell you, Pharrell was very persistent. And I'd be like, cause Shay, it would be time. Look, we're walking to the studio. Shay's way behind. I'm not going over there, man. Again, it is so funny because when I look back, man, that persistence really meant something great. You know what I'm saying? He wouldn't stop. So finally, one day, they let us in. And I'm gonna tell you who was instrumental in that. Oh, God rest in peace, Omar Chandler, Joy
Okay.
and Pain, Rob Bass. Y'all remember that record?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that was he was without Omar, we never would have had a relationship with the studio. So he was the one who kind of took us in and was like, let me help you get to Teddy, kind of thing, and see how this thing works. But one day, because we did make an impression on him, because one day they did let us in. And when they let us in, and like I said, Omar was instrumental in that. It was Markel, his younger brother, there as well. And that's when we came in as the Neptunes, and then we performed for them live, which was pretty much me singing "Look in the Water."
Hmm.
And that's when he realized, he's like, "Who wrote that?" And I mean, he's asking questions, and then he realizes these kids are dope. Now, let me give you this piece because this is probably something I don't know if I've ever said this in an interview. So this is a good piece of information for Neptune enthusiasts because what Teddy saw was a younger crew, and he was obviously busy with Blackstreet and Whitney. I mean, just tons of stuff at the time.
Yeah.
So what he was gonna do, he said, "Let me get these guys signed to my brother, which is Markel Riley from Rex and Effect. He had a label called Funky Mama Records. So Funky Mama Records offered us a deal, and I'm in. I want to say, yeah, I was a junior getting ready to be a senior in high school. Pharrell was on his way out. Well, he had already graduated that previous year, and that's when they offered us a deal of a production deal, is what it was called at the time. It wasn't a record deal; it was a production deal, and it was crazy, $5,000. You know what I mean? I don't know, 10,000. I think it was. So out of high school, we had to get a lawyer and everything. Somehow we found a lawyer. I think I don't even know if it was somebody's parents found a lawyer. He came to my crib. We met that lawyer in my garage with me, Pharrell, Chad, Shay's parents, mom, because me and Shay's parents had to be there because both of us were under 18. So he got that deal done for us. He was not an entertainment lawyer. He was the only lawyer in Virginia who just said, "Look, let me help y'all." You know what I mean? So we didn't even have an entertainment lawyer because it didn't exist in the area. Still probably don't. You know what I mean? The closest one might be my man out in Richmond. But long story short, we signed that deal under Funky Mama Records and had a deal in high school. People don't know that.
Hmm.
Yeah, so in high school we had some grams in our pockets. So you already know how our mindset was. Like, okay, wait a minute, what is school? Who cares about this anymore?
Right.
But it was fun, man. It was real fun, and so we got that deal done, and then see now, fast forward behind the scenes is where Rump Shaker and all that's happening.
Right.
because Pharrell is hanging out with Teddy now till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, where I can't even. I'm at the crib because the parents is like, no, you're not staying out and doing all that. I'm still living at home at the time. You know what I mean? So that's where he was hanging out with him, and then he started using his writing gift at that point to help out with records over there. And obviously, you can see, at this point, man, look, I think all of us could see I don't want to say competitiveness, but yeah, it was a competitiveness at some point between him and Ted.
Mm.
And we could see like Pharrell's definitely, because I didn't even know all that he could do, but he started to showcase that as he was exposed to the studio and able to do that. He wrote Teddy's whole rap to Rump Shaker. That's all him, the hook and his rhyme. The song doesn't exist without him.
And it's crazy for me hearing. Obviously, I heard Rum Shaker when it was out, but I was like a kid in elementary school. But then hearing it as an adult and hearing it as an adult with the ear of someone who pays attention to the music that they've made, and specifically Pharrell's raps, like yes, duh, that sounds just like something that Pharrell would say 100%. So it's dope. So talk a little bit about some of the other music that you guys made with that crew. You, Pharrell, Chad, Shay, under the wing of Teddy Riley. Gotta give a good shout out, a big shout out to Tammy Lucas being involved in that process as well, and that collective. Just like talk about some of those studio sessions, some of the songs that you made. Like, what was that time like?
Well, the thing was, Tammy was definitely instrumental in the connection between the studio and us. So that's when, and I think what was the turning point was Pharrell wanting to do certain things and Ted wanting to maintain his control over everything because that's his spot. You know what I mean? So I think that was a turning point in him becoming his own man as far as production goes.
Gotcha.
So what happened at that point? Because now so after they kind of like had their, I guess you could say, separation, the group is still intact, but there's no connection to the studio at this point. Because now, you know what I mean? You do your own thing then, kind of thing, from Ted's perspective. Now, years go by. You got to put in maybe 3 years go by, nothing's happened.
Hmm.
Now, and at that point, I think everybody's just trying to figure it out, man. But that's when my relationship, because I was like, well, look, and then too, I had a child, I had a son, about to have a son. So, we're growing up, everybody's kind of starting to move in a different direction in that sense. So for me, I'm trying to get the money, stay focused, and then I'm moving in a different direction. We all just moving in our own direction as men. You know what I mean? So my life is changing drastically as trying to be a young father and figure it out. But I say that to say that's when Chad and I began to develop a relationship, because now I'm like, I got to do something, because if y'all gonna do the production, I've got to do what I'm doing. I have to think about what I'm gonna do next, which is obviously the singing R&B thing, because that's what got us in the door. You know what I mean? So, and I know I could work it. So what I did was and along with a friend of mine by the name of Kevin McClammy from Norfolk, Virginia, we developed this relationship, and I started my own company then, like with him. And what we did, because me and Chad start working together at this point. So that's where you get the whole master plan out.
Gotcha.
Now, Chad, see, that's what people got to realize. Chad is a producer in his own right, just like Pharrell is a producer in his own right. And Chad's production value to the Neptunes from the orchestration, because he understood how to read music completely, whether it's a saxophone chart or a piano chart. So at that point, me and Chad started developing. Chad started, developing the R&B records, more probably what you would hear from like what they did with like people like Usher and stuff like that with me. on me, rather, I would say, because I was more just writing the songs, whereas they were production teams. So, but obviously Pharrell didn't want to go back down that road with Teddy. You see what I'm saying? So at that point, but I wasn't, signed or anything. I just started making the records like I'm gonna do a demo. Because back then, remember, demos were big. So the demo, I wasn't limited to Teddy. I literally, because the guy I was rocking with had money from the streets. So we was just making the music, and like I'ma just all day. What I would do is call up record companies and send this demo out to them. Okay, with Chad and I. So that's where that started developing, but they were still working on production at the same time. You know what I mean? So now I'm gonna get to that in a second because I'm gonna tie that into you too to help understand how they started with the production, really the first biggest break. But that's what happened with me and Chad. So now Teddy, what he does is he says, look, I get a deal. So now I'm getting, my deal is with Interscope under Lil Man Records. So Chad now is getting a check cut for 50 grand to produce my whole album back, this is in the early 90s. Wow. Nobody got no money. Nobody's checking for the Neptunes yet. This is where the bread is coming from. I get broke off. I'm good. I'm getting, 30 grand up front, $1,000 a week. I'm not worried about nothing. So we started working on my album. This is when Chad is able to empower his production because he got the money to do it now. He had the first Mercedes, Chad. He's driving a Mercedes to the studio. I didn't even have a Mercedes because I didn't want to go that deep, into my pockets. But Chad, he was like, Buffer, Chad had a Mercedes, and I copped a new whip too. But my point is, that's when things started really developing, because now Chad has the ability to go stock his equipment up, get better at what he's doing. He's in the studio with me every day. We're spending time. This is our job now. Mm. And we have engineers that are assigned to us, have a certain times in the studio that I'm going to work with him, as well as at the crib to create music. That's when I started developing my writing skills. You know what I'm saying? And understanding that I could write too as well. But obviously, like I said, we just developed our own thing for this project, and Teddy was producing records on the album too. Okay. So that's how that went. But there was a guy, Rob Walker, who Pharrell met in New York when we went to an SWV listening party. And before we get to Rob Walker, it's Kenny Ortiz, who was working for RCA Records. That's when they got the first, because we were all still hanging out and everything, even though I was doing my own thing and everything. That's when the SWV record came. Because Kenny started getting them work as a production team. I remember we all went to Atlanta, worked in Dallas, Austin studio. They're working with Joe. He's like, yo, just come. So I came out there with them too. Had a great time. That's I'm still, I think I had turned maybe, that's probably like that was early on. So we hanging out at the strip clubs and everything in Atlanta. And I'm with Joe, the singer Joe. Right. One of my singers in the world. That's when I first met him. But they never even put the record out that they did with him. But it was dope. So that's how they started doing production. Then Kenny got them on with SWV. Because Teddy had used his voice anyway in the SWV remix. He originally had a rap on that song, but Teddy didn't use his rap and just used the S, the double, the U, the V. So that's how that thing started. And then Kenny caught on, hey, these guys can produce. And then Rob was an intern at RCA. I never forget, Rob was at a cubicle when we met him. Wow. And RCA one day, I'm like, wow, we in New York, I'm a kid. But that's how the relationship developed. And then Rob saw what was in them, got them the Nori situation, and they started moving in that direction from there as a production team. So that's really how that developed, man. I think Kenny Ortiz, Tammy Lucas was the one who put them on to Kenny Ortiz. He was a good friend of hers. So that's where all of because there's no record companies here. So think about it. You're going to have some type of road to these record companies. Obviously, Teddy was there, but he's the gatekeeper here doing what he do through his label. But Kenny was able to get them into a mode of working with all these labels in New York at that point, once they got that one record.
That's dope. I did not realize that Rob Walker was an intern when y'all first got connected with him. That's
Oh
crazy.
yeah, I remember Rob at a cubicle. Never forget it, man. Just in there. But looking back, it's just amazing how now you can see how people understood the assignment at that point and saw something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what happened with him, and he was able to make that inroad with them and become their manager at that point.
Right. And I think that's, like you said, a testament to just how determined P was, right? You saw the vision when y'all was in middle school and high school, right? And so that being clear is definitely a part of having people like Tammy and Kenny Ortiz and Rob Walker see it as well, to be able to put their energy and their connections on the line for it. I think that's a dope part of the story too, that I don't think that people really
Oh
realize.
yeah, yeah, man. And two, you have to think also the energy coming out of Virginia was like almost like some type of Atlanta movement at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You got Timberland. I mean, it was just like a different energy. Teddy was hot. So, you know, that made it where they were checking for Virginia at that point.
Right.
What's going on down there?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because we're seeing world changers come out of this area, the
Yeah.
757.
And I think that's something that we talked about. We had a guest, a writer, Michael Denzel Smith. He actually went to Hampton with me. He's from Virginia Beach. So, we were talking about the Clips' first album, and we had this conversation, which I think, and you can feel free to definitely give your thoughts on it, but just the idea that Virginia Beach, the 757 in general, is kind of became this kind of place where before this time when Timbo and Pharrell and Bink, all those people really blew up, there were so many people from different parts of the country coming to Virginia Beach. Like for example, like the New York culture would come down because they want to go to the beach. Like they're not gonna make it to Miami, right? They maybe they make it to Myrtle Beach, but like if I'm from New York, I'm gonna go to the first beach I can. That's like legit, and Virginia Beach is a spot. So you're talking about Jay-Z saying, "I used to dribble down in VA." So like having those people come down and spend even a little bit of time, they're leaving something behind, but also taking something with them. So
Yeah.
having that conversation about, I think that helped set up that process of really pouring into the culture and sharing the culture to be able to take different things and make it our own, and really have Virginia become what it is and what we know it is today.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I definitely agree with that. It definitely and the New York influence has always been here. Um, and I think that was a street thing too. You know what I mean? Because you had like the New Yorkers, it was always cheaper here to come here, the cost of living. So you had people migrating from New York to Virginia saying, man, I can go retire and buy a house down there and I'm good versus standing in New York. And then you get out of the crime, and all of that. And then, too, like I said, the culture, the street culture, the New York guys understood that they could come and make money here by bringing whatever they had product and things of that nature on the street level. So I think because that's how a lot of New York guys that I met or became, cool with. And then the culture, like I said, it was influenced by New York. But like you said, they also left with something, which was the VA swag. You know what I mean? What we have
Mhm.
down here in our own right. So yeah, and musically, I think that's what was so defining. Who would have thought that a production team or a world changing the face and landscape of music would have came out of Virginia, whether it be Tim or the Neptunes. I mean, that's insane to
Right.
think that not a New York, you know what I mean? No, Virginia.
Yeah. And that's, like I said, like that is a huge part of why this podcast even exists, because I'm so proud of that. Like I tell this story all the time. My first couple of days at Hampton, I was in line for registration and I met sitting next to this guy, my man Nas from Atlanta.
Mm.
And he was like, we introduced ourselves, like, oh, where you from? I was like, I'm from here, I'm from Virginia. He's like, oh, you from Virginia, man. The Clips ain't nothing to do but cook. I was like, yeah, that's where I'm from. Yeah. All right. And that's dope to have someone like that from Atlanta that has we talking about 2003, 2004 when Atlanta
Yeah.
was on top, right? So like for the to have that recognition and be able to have that connection for someone at that level to be like, oh yeah, we appreciate what y'all got going on up there too, which was dope for sure.
Oh yeah, VA made their mark all over, man. And even with that, like you said, with the clips and what that meant, that record meant to the streets, to because that was a defining moment for them to see how VA rolled and what um, guys from here looked like that were from that world
Right. For
or
sure.
operating in that world.
For sure. So tell me some of your favorites from the Neptunes, Pharrell and Chad production, writing, catalog, like specifically in the R&B.
That's a good question. Great, especially specifically R&B. I'm gonna well, because Chad, I have a record called No Doubt on that project, which reminds me of some of the R&B that they started to do. So I'm gonna say one of my favorites is definitely the You Don't Have to Call with Usher. I mean, that's just crazy. The Babyface record,
Mhm.
insane. And you know what else is a dope record that has an R&B feel? Is that LL Cool J record. What's it called? Smile Today or something
Love
like
You
that?
Better.
Love You Better. See, you know all of, yeah, you got it all. Love You Better is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
It's funny you
Amazing,
say that.
amazing, amazing.
It's funny you say that because so tomorrow we're actually hosting a live episode for the first time here in
Oh
Richmond.
wow.
Um,
Dope.
basically me and my partner are gonna do a battle. Like there's different categories and you got to play a Neptune's R&B song that fits the category, right? But I think that, you know, there's a wild card round and I might play like there's several songs like Love You Better. That's really not an R&B song, it's a rap song. But the way that they put their thing on it and they did what they do, it feels like an R&B song. It's a love song. And it's like, yeah, LL Cool J is rapping, but like it's that definitely gives you when everybody's having R&B parties now and you would hear that record there, no question, right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
about Love You Better, I think about Jay-Z, Excuse Me, Miss. I think about
Excuse me, Mrs. Dope.
yeah, I think about you know,
Oh no, but if you gonna go Jay-Z, I gotta go Give It to Me is my favorite record from that. God
yeah,
dang, that joint. That's crazy. But
yeah,
the one thing about I think the records I gravitate towards with them are records that I can tell Pharrell's drum pattern is on.
mm-hmm.
Like they're his because he was always a great drummer. That's what people don't realize. We were playing the drums, so I think that's what made the production different. Even when we would play set, I'd be like, "Yo, that's dope!" Like he had a certain way of rhythmic patterns that were different. So I think that's what makes and he played bass drum in the drum line, not snare. So the syncopations and learning those notes, that's why boom 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 on the LL Love You Better. Like the basses drum and kicks are always doing something different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're moving different. Even on the You Don't Have to Call, that's a high tempo record. But when you hear that and then you bring in the chat, so all of that stuff is just, man, it's amazing when you put two creatives together who both are dope musically. And like I said, with those drum patterns that I think that's what makes the difference. Because none of the records are really super slow if you pay attention that we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, you know, and give your perspective on this as well, right? I feel like part of their story of blowing up and part of what has kind of made them the superstars is being able to give this R&B sound to artists who are not traditionally R&B. So when we had this conversation earlier on this season, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, those Justin Timberlake records are you categorize them as pop because it's Justin Timberlake, but those are some of those are some real serious like
R&B records.
valid records, right? Like I think he's done
Yeah.
a bunch of people, but just talk about that. What do you think about how how they have helped artists like that kind of cross over into our world a little bit?
I think again, that's a great question. I think production wise, and this may be an ode to Virginia. It is to the 757. I don't think I think it made it easier because this is the thing. We have a different perspective on a worldview than, you know, because of where we grew up.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I was saying earlier about us being the minority and having those experiences with other cultures, not just white people, but Filipino people, all kinds of different races. Like some of my good friends were Filipino in my neighborhood. So early on, I knew what lumpia was. You know what I'm saying? So the thing is, I think that's what made them special in that sense and able to do what they did, like you said, by cross pollinating musically. Because what production uh, team do you know of, or not even? Yeah, I say or production um, person that's an icon that you know of that is Filipino. Chad's the only one. This is the probably the only Filipino contributor to music history in the way that the Neptunes impacted music culture. It's because of his race,
Right.
And his exposure and ability to not just be boxed into, one type of sound. You're getting all of that when you get them. And that's why together they were able to achieve what they were musically. Whatever Pharrell has gone on to do as far as brands and artistically with fashion and different things and even whatever he's done. You know what I mean? As far as the business ventures and all of that is something separate. But when you talk about the impact of the music, that's them together that made that happen. And I think it's because of the multicultural element that they brought to the table. Because Chad is going to say something that's going to totally make you think that what in the world, I would never put that in a song. I mean, look at Nori, that daggone rubber band. That's a rubber band sound. In the what that Chad made himself. Bro. Who's thinking of making a sound out of a rubber band but Chad? So let's start right there. That's the difference. That's the shift, the magic, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Is in that combination.
So the whole point of this season that we're doing is, it's R&B season, a tribute to R&B. So before we let you go, what does R&B mean to you?
Well, when you talk about R&B, you got to give Teddy Riley you know what I mean? We got to get back on him because that's because the R&B did change. And I think, the Neptunes were part of that shift. And it started going in a different direction where hip hop was more of the influence along with it too. And then you had, like you said, it became more pop. You started hearing artists. It became more radio friendly and things of that nature. And I think even now you're seeing that with the rappers singing and all of that, where R&B is really taking a far back seat where you're not getting that singing that you got before from artists that really could blow and it mattered. There was artist development. They were singing their faces off. That was a requirement. But now you ain't even got to listen. Just whatever you do, we can auto-tune you and we're going to put something on the radio. But, I think R&B to me goes back to, again, that Southern gospel, soul progression, and that's what I think Ted brought to the table too, was true R&B records. And I'm grateful for that because it's that's never gonna die, man. Right. That's never gonna die. And I think the music just speaks to your soul in a different way. So I would, for me, Blackstreet and my experience with Future Records embodied the definite, of true R&B. And I can say that because even my album, the Master Plan album, Selections from Master Plan, which is available now on all platforms, just in case you want to stream that and really dig into the history and hear some Chad Hugo production you never heard before, Teddy Riley as well. But my album not even coming out or being released fully on Capitol, but you know, and there's still being a following in all these other countries, like, is insane because it just speaks to the power of R&B. Okay. And a guy like me who's, you know, 40 years later or how many ever years later, I'm still reveling in the impact of that because that music is different in the sense that it's timeless. You know, that Black Sheep record Don't Leave is never going anywhere, bro. So, you know, and Ted, but again, he's a genius when it comes to that, to R&B. So I think for me, I have to stick with the Teddy Riley's era. You know, even the era prior to that, where you had the DeBarge and the Midnight Star, the Freddie Jackson, the Glenn Jones. Come on, man. What? We've only just begun. Stop playing. So, I mean, I can't even listen. I don't call this other stuff R&B right now. I mean, I appreciate it because there's a progression and an evolution, but and it'll never. It's not music's supposed to do that. You know what I mean? For every generation. So, but I think R&B, the true essence of it. What's that song? Twin. Where have you been? What's that name of that record?
Yeah, that's Money Long. I don't know the name of the song though, but I know
Okay,
exactly.
but that to me is a good R&B song
Yeah.
for this time. See, R&B to me is about melody, and I don't, and that's why when I don't hear her, she's another great R&B artist. You know what I'm saying? So there's a few out there, but like I said, to me, you got to be bringing it, man. You got to bring that soul. You got to bring something, you know, that makes sense as far as musically for me to really say stamp that as a true R&B. And
Yeah.
you got to be able to sing, man.
You got to be able to sing. You got to be able
Yeah,
to sing. And I think that that's, like you said, being able to throw some auto tune on it. And, you know, when you said the thing about the rapper singing, like, it hit me because I realized like we've been getting that for at least 20 years now, right? Like, you know, like Ja Rule was what he was, but he's kind of started doing that. And then 50 started doing it, with Drake doing it. Like, and like that's a real thing that kind of blended or blurred these lines between are we rapping or are we singing or and the singing rapping that you're doing is not really singing because it's just the auto tune on it and like
right.
so how that kind of diluted the whole concept of R&B. But like you said,
Diluted.
there's some good ones out there for people who are paying attention. And we also talked about this on the show before too. That's an important part of this whole, you know, kind of analysis of the state of R&B, right? Is, you know, technology is we consume music differently, right? And the way that we consume music is also very much driven by how much money can be made from the music itself in the process, right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we are gonna get hit in the face more with the people who are doing catchy stuff. That doesn't mean that they have the most talent. And I think that that's what we grew up on. What the artists that you just named, and I was talking about Luther, like no, that was very different than what we got. And there's some people who are trying to keep that legacy going. I think we just gotta it's just harder to find them or harder to like have their hits be, you know, or their music be as popular is because it's not catchy. Like the fact that
Yeah.
that long thing went viral on TikTok was like crazy, and it actually is a good song, like which is not always the case.
Right. Yep, I agree. And I think that like you said, it's a money thing. But you know, at the same time, because we consume music differently, and it's so I think one of the biggest problems with everything now is oversaturation because whereas when I came up, you had to have a record deal in order to be known and it separated you. Like you were dope because you were discovered. You were
Right.
dope because you broke through and the label got behind you and made it, you know, put those spins to make sure they were getting done at the radio stations and all of that. Whereas now, man, a computer, a MacBook, and a microphone, and they think they're an artist. So now it's like you said, you gotta sift through, and that's why I'd be so excited when I find something. I'm like, oh my god, this person's dope. I didn't even know they were out. Like I can't Jane Hancock.
Hmm.
that signed to Snoop, for instance, would be a perfect example. I don't know if it's Jane. I'm not sure the first name, but it's Hancock. She's
Yeah.
dope and she's R&B. There's people that you discover now because guess what? You can put your music out yourself. So that's why I encourage people who can blow. Like, don't be, you know, afraid because man, you could start your own thing now,
Right.
but you don't have to wait on a label. So I think that, I mean, it's a two-way street, and the
Yep.
streams aren't paying anything. You know what I'm saying? So you have to just approach it differently now, because again, back in the day, hey, like I just shared earlier, you get a record deal, now you have a job. Versus now, you don't really have a job unless you're on the road somewhere
Right.
in the music industry as an artist, because you're not going to make enough to sustain your life through streaming.
Right.
So there has to be this balance of, you know, and like you said, the ones they're going to push are going to be the catchy things, not necessarily the most talented things. So, but it's coming. I see different things, man, and I am glad that the internet has made it a fair playing field too, to where we get to discover new talent and keep that going. And it's different ways to make that happen.
Yeah. It's definitely a gift and a curse. It's definitely
Mm-hmm.
a gift of having it be an easier process for people who, have the talent to be able to put the energy into it and at least shoot their shot. But
Right.
at the same time, that same opportunity is available for the people who don't have the talent to shoot their shot. And if they
Oh
just
my God. It's
right,
annoying, bro. And that's what's hard for me as an older artist, like putting out new music, is I have to, like, that's why I'm really with this new project. I'm refining it to its highest level that I feel like, I mean, it's already crazy, but I just see so much foolishness put out. I'm dropping a new single this week. My new album's coming out next week. I mean, this is repetitive and all of it's trash. And I'm just trying to figure out and I know they're not making no money. So I'm just trying to figure out what's the point, unless you're just getting gratification from feeling like you just have a platform. But I feel like what we have to do as artists, man, is want to make an impact. That's where I'm at, at my age and stage. Is let's make an impact, man. Let's make an impact on the culture. And I think, and I'm glad I'm saying this because it made me remember. I think that's what we're seeing even with Kendrick Lamar, the whole Drake thing, all this stuff. I'm glad to see that because I think it was needed in the sense of it makes people say, let me listen a little bit deeper now
yeah,
to what this person is really saying versus just saying, oh, this is dope. And maybe I want to be fed something different than a bunch of stuff that don't even matter.
right.
And I want to get down to the core of who I am as a person. And that's what I think is important, man. That's why our culture's so messed up, man. We have to like start talking about something different than just nothing.
Right.
Yeah. So I see it coming though, because the world is forcing us to look within ourselves now musically. So I think what we're gonna hear, I believe we're gonna hear deeper content going forward.
Yeah. I definitely agree with what you said about the Kendrick and Drake thing because I, I try not to be negative, right? Like I grew up, me and Drake are the same age. So like
Mm-hmm.
Drake first started, the trajectory of our lives was parallel. And then there was a moment where there was a shift. And I feel like musically he's still kind of in the same space and I'm just not there anymore. And that's okay.
That's
I can
good.
acknowledge that there's certain things about the music that are good and I'm not the audience anymore, but Kendrick has been Kendrick since, Section 80 and Overly Dedicated when he was very much like this is what I'm going,
Yes.
this is what's important to me, this was important to our people.
Right.
This is what's going on in Compton. Like, so like
Mm-hmm.
that's important to me. And I feel like that was definitely very clear over the past few months here.
Oh, and another artist I would bring up that I think, and I'm so glad he's been winning the Grammy first and then the BET Award, Killer Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the greatest albums I think created in a long time. And it's musically insane. And the things you're saying on there are so impactful and different. And I
Yeah.
think that album, man, is just so dope, man. And it gave me what I was missing musically from everything.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the direction. He's an older guy too, so I think that, like I said again, people are ready to hear, like you just said in your statement that you just made. Your life trajectory is different now. You need to be fed something different to make you think a little bit differently. And we're not just listening now to music. And that's why I think gospel music is great too. But we're not just listening for our flesh to be appeased, but we need something in our souls to be touched too.
Mm-hmm.
So that while I'm listening to this, I'm still walking in my maturity as a man and different things that come along with who I am, age and stage wise. Like I can't get into some of this stuff. What am I? Come on. What am I looking? Hands on your knees. Come on, man. That's not even right now. I'm thankful to be able to still be in the gym working out. So I'm not thinking about the hands on the knees right now. But I need to consume things that are relevant to my life. So that's one thing. And that's another thing, going back to being able, it does have a good point, being able to put out music, like where guys like Killer Mike don't have to have this major push to break through. Right. Because the platforms are there. You know what I mean? So I'm excited at the same time where we are.
So before I let you go, talk to us about your project, man. Give us the rundown. What should we expect?
Oh man, the new project is really I haven't even named it yet, but it's like I would say 75% done. I'm thinking I don't even know. It might just be called Mike Etheridge, because my new project is actually the substratum of what happened. Because a lot of people be like, well, why didn't the record never come out? And why didn't Capitol put the album out and all of that? This album is the continuation of that all these years later, because my faith became a big part of my life. In the music industry. For me, God became more important than the fame and all the other things and all of that. So once I had that experience where my faith became the priority, a lot of things just didn't matter to me anymore when it came to the music industry. The things that I relished as a child and just wanted to have and felt like this is what I needed to be complete, just took a back seat to the things of God. Family and just trying to be a better man and all that became more important, and serving him, obviously, with my gift. So with this album, I'm excited because, and I also too, let me just say, the record Breakthrough that I put out on my artist Slater Joel, which I looked at last night, is almost at 70,000 streams worldwide, which is great for an independent release. But my label, G Next Life, is about my continuation in the music industry. Because what happened when the head of Capitol Records came to me and we were adding songs to the album, the Master Plan project, I was like, look, I want to add some things that talk about my faith, and I'm going in a different direction. And we're going to marry a little bit more hip hop into what I'm doing. This was years ago. And his thing was, I want you to stay this way. The Mike Etheridge of R&B, the Teddy Riley Mike E that never evolved, that people just only know that's what he wanted completely. But I knew and understood the world is progressing. So if the world is changing, but anyway, it became an issue of either you're going to do this or we don't have a deal kind of thing. So my thing was, I'm going to follow my heart and God. And that's what I did, man. So that's why this project is really important to me, because this is finally the culmination and the continuation of the vision I saw from then. But obviously the music is so much more refined and crazy because, as a man musically and as a talent, you grow. But man, I'm so excited about this project, man. Like I said, it's going to be a marriage of everything musically. I worked with a producer out of New Jersey named Aaron Washington, who produced most of the album, and a guy I went to high school with, Superb Clausen. He produced a couple of records on the album. I'm still working on, it may be some stuff from Bink up there. We'll see. But the thing is, man, this album is like, man, because I'm rapping, I'm singing, I'm doing everything, man. And I'm also featuring other artists, some singers on there. One in particular, Stephen Parks, who's out of Virginia. And he's the definition of R&B and gospel. So when you get him on this project, you're gonna hear a lot of what I love. And I was able to write it, and produce it in the studio with him on some of the records. The first single, which is called The Count, he's on. I think it's you're gonna get the vision there. So yeah, man, I'm just really excited about this project. sharing my faith through this mesh of hip hop and R&B that I think is going to really be life changing. And I think it's going to feed my generation as well as impact the other. So that way people can consume something that sounds amazing, but it's still touching their spirit, man. So I'm excited about it. And it's going to be explanatory. One of the most exciting things for me about the project, it's not like gospel, or I don't want people to go into that thinking that, because then they'll get disappointed if they're looking for a complete gospel. It's not like that, but it has the undertones, but it also talks about my life. This album actually talks about who I am as a person. So you don't have to wonder who Mike is anymore and just have the image of me dancing around in the master plan joint. Like, you're gonna really get to find out who Mike Etheridge is with this album. So that's my goal. Like, that's the most amazing part of this project to me, is that I'm gonna get to feed the people who have followed me, or been fans since day one and different things like that. And the Neptune trilogy, being an original Neptune and all that. This album is the culmination of who Mike Etheridge is now.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, bro, listen, it's some heat up there. It's some pure gasoline fire on this joint. So I'm excited about it, man. And I'm also looking for artists too. So anybody that, like, and just to work with, and find that special someone that maybe I can help and add value to their career with advice, with wisdom, with studio knowledge and artist development knowledge, especially singers, man, reach out to me, because I'm really focusing on building G Next Life as not only a label, but as a place where artists can come and get information. I just did a consulting thing the other day for an artist with them. And I felt like, man, this was really fulfilling, because I get to share things that can help you now, even with me understanding the independent side more, to further your career. So yeah, check for the new album. And also, if you have something you're working on out there, and you feel like, hey, maybe I need to talk to this guy, or maybe I need to share some things with him and he can help me and we can help each other. Especially younger artists, man. I want to see people win. That's what I'm trying to do with Steven. I also gonna have a young lady. She's I worked with her before, but her name is Brittany Tierra, out of our area too.
Right.
She's making a comeback, and so that's gonna be really dope. This record I got with her, I'm doing with her on the album. Listen, man, I'm not stopping, bro. Like, I'm gonna still be helping somebody when I'm 60 with this thing, because music, like, listen, if you started like we did, it's in your veins.
Mm-hmm. For sure, man. It's definitely music has so much power to just reach people and touch people in so many different ways, man. So it's
And I
really,
really think and appreciate what you guys are doing too. Let me say that, because you know, um, you're keeping the culture alive. You're keeping the conversation alive, and you're paying homage to something that I think changed the landscape of music, man, culturally all over the world. And in the 757, we're seeing a lot of great things happen, man. Here, even more shows, more things happening locally. This all started a long time ago. So I think I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm glad that I got to talk to you guys, man, because you know, I think it's a great platform to just see the impact of what the Neptunes meant, not just then, but now, still moving mountains and still creating great things, man, all over the world. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm excited about the future, man. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, thank you for that. Like it's definitely, like I said earlier, it's about the history and the culture
Yes.
and what it means. It's not just about like, we talked a little bit about technology and oversaturation. Like there's a million podcasts out there. So like this is literally
Mhm.
just a labor of love, just,
Right.
keep be able to express myself and be able to have conversations with strangers or people that have like actually lived this, or just
Yes.
I try to do an episode every season with my best friends, like because this is where it came up, where we was in the car in high school listening to all this music. So I think that's really what's important. I think what we need is to just make sure that, like, that's the great thing about the technology, though, is like this will live forever. So we can pass this down to the generations to be able to understand, like, kids might know Pharrell as being, he got a Lego movie coming out and all this other stuff, Louis Vuitton, but like come back and listen to this episode with Mike E and hear how like that all started and be inspired by that, right? Like be inspired by you can
Be
do it
inspired.
too.
Yes.
Right. Being a kid from Virginia, you can do it too. So I think that's
Facts.
really
Facts. And you could do it better and bigger. And I'm so grateful, man. That's another thing I would just say too, for the opportunities that I've had in the industry and being able to sit back, man, and just witness this and still be making a little money off of the industry and have a discography. And I'm just grateful, man. You know what I mean? And sometimes you have to know your purpose. And I think that's the biggest thing is to walk in your purpose, whatever that is for you. And hopefully this area again can see that kind of push. We've got a lot of great artists here. I just talking to a guy about that the other day. So I'm looking forward to what the future of Virginia looks like. I think it's going to be amazing. I think we're going to see a resurgence of that creative spirit as far as what we had going, which was the unity as well. So I'm looking forward to, man, what the future holds.
for sure. Thank you so much, man. This was definitely a dope conversation, bro. I appreciate your
Much
time.
love, bro. I appreciate you having me. And anytime, bro. Don't forget, y'all, check out that new Mike Etheridge album coming and G Next Life and all the things that we're gonna bring musically to the table, whether it's consulting, anything. Feel free to reach out to me personally.
For all the listeners, make sure to follow Mike E on the social platforms.
Yes,
All of them.
sir.
Twitter, you got Twitter or Instagram?
I do
All
Twitter a little, but Instagram definitely Mike Etheridge 757, and on Facebook I'm really have a heavy presence there. Just Michael E Etheridge or Michael Etheridge. I have two pages, but you'll see them connected. But yeah, I look forward to sharing with you guys and living in the spirit of creativity, man, for the future of the youth. Let's get to it.
yes, sir. All right, everybody. It's been another episode of Neptune Sunday. Appreciate everybody listening and support. Make sure to look out for Mike E's project coming out soon. You gotta let's just say soon. We'll just say soon.
Let's just say the first single is already done. I mean, I'm ready to cook that thing and send it out, bro. But it's just like this is my baby, and that first record is so dope. I'm like, man, I gotta just make sure everything's right. I don't want to make sure the impact is there, but yes, I got choirs coming on this thing. I got all the time. Yeah, I'm not playing around. This is definitely, and I'm gonna be honest, my vendetta on this album is against the enemy, which is Satan, man. And I really want to prove that you can be creative and still showcase your faith without fitting in. And that's what we've always done. And shout out to Pharrell and Chad and all of the crew and all of the guys who I admire and who were a part of the journey, man, for me and gave me the inspiration to actually do something different. So I'm excited.
That's what's up, man. All right, guys. Catch us next Neptune
All
Sunday.
right, Neptune Sunday podcast. Make sure y'all support my man. Love what he's doing. 757. Let's go.
All right, y'all. Peace and love.
All right, man.